The storyline framework only includes the 7 basic elements that you're going to find in almost every story. Virtually every story, Ken? Yep, you're going to find this exact formula in 99.9% of all great stories. 99% of stories that grab and hold our attention, that move our emotions, that transform us, which, if you think about it, is exactly what you want your messaging to do to high-value patients. You want your messaging to grab and captivate them. You want it to generate emotion to get them to take action, and that's exactly what this is going to do for your messaging.
Have you ever had a dream that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
What is happening to me?
The answer is out there. It's the question that drives us.
What is a .com dentist?
The .com dentist uncovers the world that's been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
They're watching you.
Successful dentists like you are a disease. You are a cancer to the corporate model. And we are the cure.
Get me a computer and an internet connection.
Welcome to the real world.
So you're here to save the dental profession?
So what do you need?
Marketing weapons. Lots of marketing weapons.
No one's ever done anything like this.
That's why it's going to work.
Buckle you. Kiss Kansas is going bye-bye.
Unfortunately, no one can be told what a .com dentist is. You have to see it for yourself.
Hey everybody, Ken Newhouse here from .com Dentist, and I want to welcome you to this episode of the .com Dentist podcast, the show that helps you clarify your messaging and communications so you can attract more high-value fee-for-service new patients, increase case acceptance, and become more profitable. And on today's show, I'm going to reveal a blueprint you can use to create compelling messaging and communications for your marketing collateral, your website, and your face-to-face communications. Messaging and communications that high-value patients find magnetic and irresistible, that grabs their attention, gets them to pick up the phone and call your office. Messaging and communications that resonate with them, gets them to accept your treatment plan, whip out the credit card, and get started with you. Now, in our last episode, we learned that you've got to clarify your messaging and communications because amid all the competition, amid all the noise in the marketplace, your patients' brains can't hear what you have to say. And if they can't hear you, they're able to pay attention to you. So in the midst of all the noise in the marketplace, how are you going to get their attention? Well, you're going to get their attention using the elements of story. Elements of story, Ken? You got it. Elements of story. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, Ken, story? Listen, that kind of sounds kind of artsy-fartsy to me. Listen, I didn't subscribe to this podcast so I could learn how to write a movie script. I subscribed to this podcast so I could learn how to improve my messaging and communications. I subscribed to this podcast, Ken, so I could learn how to consistently attract high-value patients into my practice. Hey, look, that's awesome. And that's exactly why you should pay attention to what I'm about to say. Story is the most powerful tool there is if you're trying to captivate and compel people to take action and become your patients. Story is literally the secret language of the human brain. The power that story possesses to cut through noise, clutter, and distraction is literally, guys, it's unbelievable. Now, here's a little known fact that illustrates. Did you know that the average human brain spends 30% of its waking hours daydreaming? 30%. And what's really interesting about that is that daydreaming is actually a survival mechanism. Who knew, right? Listen, if your brain is processing a bunch of information that you don't need to process, your brain is very quickly going to tell itself, hey, listen, let's head over to Neverland. Let's think about fishing in the Gulf with my buddies, or let's think about going to Disney with my kids, or think about what it would feel like to buy that new Bentley GT. Let's protect ourselves and just zone so we can actually save energy in case the invaders come. So daydreaming, as it turns out, is a survival mechanism. And if you want high-value patients to pay attention to your messaging, you've got to wake them up. And story is the most effective way to do that. And if you're like me, and if you're like my most successful clients, By the end of today's show, you're going to see how story is a powerful tool that you can use to attract high-value patients into your practice. Now let me ask you a question. Have you ever considered what happens in your brain when you walk into a theater to watch a movie? You've got a drink, maybe some milk into a theater to watch a movie. You've got a drink, maybe some milk duds, and as the lights dim in the theater, your brain automatically suspends the act of daydreaming for 90 minutes to 2 hours and more. So where else can you go, or what other actions can you take where you plug in, you engage, and pay attention and do not daydream? Now, to understand why this is important, I want you to listen to this cut from neuropsychologist Jonathan Gottschall's best-selling book, The Storytelling Animal, and what he says about daydreaming and the power that story plays in our everyday lives.
Humans are creatures of story, so story touches nearly every aspect of our lives. Daydreams are hard to study scientifically, but if you tune into your stream of consciousness, you will discover that daydreaming is the mind's default state. We daydream when driving, when walking, when cooking dinner, when getting dressed in the morning, when staring off into space at work. In short, whenever the mind is not absorbed in a mentally demanding task, say writing a paragraph like this one, or doing some difficult calculation, it will get restless and skip off into la-la land. Clever scientific studies involving beepers and diaries suggests that an average daydream is about 14 seconds long and that we have about 2,000 of them per day. In other words, we spend about half of our waking hours, 1/3 of our lives on Earth, spinning fantasies. We daydream about the past, things we should have said or done, working through our victories and failures. We daydream about mundane stuff, such as imagining different ways of handling a conflict at work. But we also daydream in a much more intense, story-like way.
Listen, there's no other device on the planet that can do that to a human brain. Story, in fact, is the only tool that can do that. And the amazing thing about story is that it's based on formulas. It's based on proven recipes, and all great stories use them. And we've been using these same formulas to tell our stories for over 4,000 years. You know, as most of you guys know, I've been a direct marketing copywriter for over 14 years now, and I can actually remember back probably about 10, 11 years ago, it's because I wanted to learn how to use them to make my writing more captivating, make it more persuasive, more effective, right? So I started taking classes and seminars and reading books, lots and lots of books. And as you guys know, I read anywhere from 2 to 3 books a week. But to me, learning story structure and how to use story in my copy was akin to learning like how to write music. And when I realized how formulaic stories were, I thought to myself, you have got to be kidding me. You mean to tell me that if I do this in a story, and then this and this, people are going to actually pay attention? Now, unlike physics and calculus, effective stories don't use more than a handful of formulas. In fact, most experts believe that there are only 7 story formulas that have ever been used. Literally, just 7 story formulas or frameworks, and I actually agree with them. Now, if you look at The Matrix and Lord of the Rings, it's the same movie. You just plug in a different character and a different conflict, and it works the same way. And the power that story has over the human brain and how you can use it to create more effective, more powerful messaging fascinates me. Now, I want to warn you, give you a heads up. If you keep listening to today's episode, chances are pretty good. In fact, chances are really good that I'm probably going to ruin movies and books for you, because from now on, you're going to be able to see what's going to happen before it actually happens in the movie. I'm not kidding. You're going to be sitting there watching a movie and you're going to be able to predict what happens next. You guys know my wife, the beautiful and talented Lisa, actually hates going to the movies with me because she knows at some point in the movie, I'm going to lean over and whisper to her, hey, this gal's about to die. She's going to die here, right here in the next scene. Watch this. Now, that's irritating, I know, but sometimes I can't help myself, right? So stories are really formulaic, and in studying these formulas, we're actually studying best practices on how to captivate a human being and hold their attention and their focus. By studying story structure, we're learning what people are actually interested in and what kinds of messaging and communications they want to hear most. Listen, story formulas reveal a well-worn path in the human brain. And when you can position your practice and your specialized services along that path, your messaging is going to be a lot more engaging to them, and you're going to generate a lot more traffic coming into your practice. The .com Dentist podcast and the entire .com Dentist platform is about helping you become more magnetic to high-value, fee-for-service, cash new patients. And the practice storyline framework is the key to your success. Now, to help further illustrate my point, I want you to listen to David J.P. Phillips recount the findings of a research project. This is a project that's known around the world for using elements of story to increase the value of items being sold online.
In 2009, a man, a journalist, by the name Rob Walker, wanted to find out is storytelling really the most powerful tool of all? And in order to do this, he went on his computer and he bought 200 objects from eBay. And the average price of the objects were about $1. He then called 200 authors and he asked them, hey, would you like to be part of the significant object study? Which means that I would like you to write a story to one of the objects. And 200 authors said yes. So there he had 200 objects, he had 200 stories, and I assume that it was with nail-biting anticipation that he went on eBay again with all the 200 objects. Would there be a difference? Would there be a change? Do you think there was a change? One of the objects was this beautiful horse's head. There we go. The beautiful horse's head. Now this beautiful horse's head was bought for 99 cents and was sold when the story was added for $62. That is a slight increase of 6,395%. So was this a one-off situation? Not really, because he bought the 200 objects for a total of $129, selling them for $8,000.
Now, that study's actually been published in dozens of scientific journals around the world, and it's one of the many research studies out there that demonstrates the power of story. Okay, so I gave you the spoiler alert, and if you're willing to let me ruin stories for you, let's take a look at the practice storyline framework. Now, someone who's writing a screenplay or a book might need 30 to 40 plot points in their story, but for purposes of clarifying your messaging and communications, the practice storyline framework only includes the 7 basic elements that you're going to find in almost every story. Virtually every story, Ken? Yep, you're going to find this exact formula in 99.9% of all great stories. 99% of stories that grab and hold our attention. 99% of stories that grab and hold our attention, that move our emotions, that transform us, which, if you think about it, is exactly what you want your messaging to do to high-value patients. You want your messaging to grab and captivate them. You want it to generate emotion to get them to take action, and that's exactly what this is going to do for your messaging. So, how does this story formula work? Well, that's a great question, and to help make this process easy to implement for you, I created, like I said, the practice storyline framework. And if you're ready, let's take a look at how it works and how it can help you transform your messaging and your communications. Now, the first thing that all great stories have is a character, otherwise known as the hero. So the hero actually has to show up on the scene, and in all stories, they're going to show up at the outset, at the beginning. So you've got a guy, a girl, an animated toy like Woody in Toy Story or whatever, right? The main character, the hero, shows up, and within an extremely short period of time, we know what the hero wants. We have to know what they have to accomplish. I mean, we have to know, oh, you know what? The Earth is dying. Or this hero has to defeat the evil empire so the rebellion can win and there can be peace in the galaxy that's far, far away. Or this hero has to defeat the machines and save the inhabitants of Zion. So the hero's goal posits a story question in the brains of the people watching the movie, and the story question is this: is the hero going to get what they want? And that's the question that makes you curious enough that you're going to pay attention for 90 minutes to 2 hours or more through the entire story. But the story doesn't work if we don't define what the hero wants and if we don't define it quickly. Now, right now, I can imagine that you're sitting here thinking to yourself, Ken, that's great. That's how story works. Fabulous. I got it. But what in the world does this have to do with me getting more high-value new patients and making more money? Listen, I am glad you asked. Here's why this is important for you. You have to clearly define the important things that your high-value patients want. When these patients read your website, hear your elevator pitch, talk to you at an event, read your email, whatever, you have to define concisely and quickly something that they want. It's as though you've invited them into a story, but you can't stop there. The second thing you have to have if you want to tell this story, if you want to compel high-value new patients to make an appointment with you, is you have to have a problem. Let me explain that. If you define something that the patient wants, and then in minute 6 you give them what they want, that's called a short story. And if you want this framework to work for you, you want this story to actually be a little longer than that, right? So you have to put a problem into our patient's way, your hero's way. And without a doubt, the problem, listen to me carefully, this is a writer-downer, the problem is the most important element in the story. You see, all story is really about the core problem or problems that the hero, i.e. your patients, are facing. The problem is what hooks patients into your story. They're asking themselves, are you going to be able to help me overcome this? So what does this have to do with your messaging, your branding, and your marketing? Well, it means this. You should always, always, always be talking about your patient's problems. Always. You should be known for solving their problems, and that problem should be defined. New patients come to your office, they visit your website, they respond to your Facebook ads for one reason. They're trying to solve a problem, and if you haven't communicated clearly and concisely what problem you solve, good luck. You're not going to attract these high-value patients. You're not going to increase production, and you're not going to become exceedingly profitable because the only thing these patients are motivated to resolve are their problems. So you've got to clearly define that problem or problems, just like in a story. There has to be a problem that is clearly defined and in your messaging. There has to be a problem that's clearly defined for your patient. And then in story, everybody knows intuitively that these problems cannot be solved by the hero alone. They need the help of someone else. Listen, heroes can't solve their own problems. If they could solve their own problems, we would wonder why they got the problem in the first place, right? So if you had a hero that had a problem in a story, and then they woke up one day and they said, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I've got this huge problem. You know, the earth is about to die. I think I'm just going to go ahead and solve it today. Yeah, today's the day. It's Saturday. I think I'll do it today, right? What's going to happen if you have a story like that? The audience is going to check out. So storytellers, going back more than 4,000 years, figured out that for stories to be effective, they had to bring in another character. And this character enters the story to help the hero prevail, to succeed over his or her problem. At .com Dentist, we call this character the mentor, the trusted advisor. Now, the mentor shows up, and the sole purpose of the mentor is to understand the hero's story and to give them a plan so that they can overcome their problem. And it's for this reason, the biggest paradigm shift that you're going to encounter in the practice storyline framework is you should be positioning yourself as the mentor and not the hero. Let me say that again. You are not the hero. Your patient is the hero of the story, not you. You are the mentor. You're the trusted advisor. And when we explore this topic in a coming episode, I'm going to show you the two things that you actually need to do to position yourself as the mentor in your patient's story and do that effectively. Now, there's an important reason for that. Your patients, especially high-value patients, the people who are considering giving you $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 and more, are looking for a mentor. They're looking for an advisor they can trust. And one of the biggest mistakes I see dentists making, especially on their websites, is when they position themselves as the hero. And they're saying things like, hey, listen, we're awesome. We do this. We're going to accomplish great things. Look at all the certifications we have and the awards we've won. And we went to this institute. We have this training. And as you're sitting there, figuratively speaking, thumping your chest, saying, look at me and look at how great I am, your patient is hearing that and they're saying, hey, listen, I'm the hero and you're the hero? Listen, I need you to step aside because I'm actually looking for a mentor who can actually help me prevail. I'm looking for a trusted advisor who can help me get the results that I want. So you want to position yourself as the mentor, as the trusted advisor. And when you position yourself as the mentor, they're going to say, listen, you're the one I've been looking for. Home Depot does it. Allstate Insurance does it. Coca-Cola and Apple do it. You will not find a billion-dollar brand that does not position themselves as the mentor, as the trusted advisor, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is because if you don't position yourself as the mentor, high-value patients won't be able to figure out why they need you. So in this initial series of the .com Dentist podcast, I'm going to teach you how to position yourself as the mentor, the trusted advisor, for you personally and for your practice. Now, after you position yourself as the mentor, there's an important thing that the mentor does in a hero's life. The mentor doesn't just solve the problem for the hero. Listen, that would never work in a movie or a book. Solve the problem for the hero. Listen, that would never work in a movie or a book. In a story, it wouldn't work. What works is that the mentor gives the hero a plan. A simple, understandable plan that the hero has to execute in order to prevail over the problem and succeed. Now, later in this series, we're going to actually look at a handful of the most successful movies of all time. And we're going to look at those so you can see this in action, but it's important for you to understand that this is true for your practice as well. So as this series unfolds, we're going to spend some time about how to give your patient a plan that invites them to become your patient. It's going to be a critical part of the success of your marketing efforts. Now, the next step in the practice storyline framework is where the mentor calls the hero to action. And if we think about it, everybody knows that heroes don't take action on their own. In fact, heroes are never the strongest character in a story. Heroes are weak. They don't know if they can get the job done. They're afraid they're ill-equipped. The mentor, on the other hand, that's one reason that patients aren't looking for another hero, because heroes are weak. Heroes are thinking to themselves, hey, listen, I'm looking for somebody who's strong, somebody that can show me the way, somebody who can give me a plan and help me get what I want. And when you position yourself as the mentor, as that trusted advisor, you position yourself as the strong one. Listen, heroes don't want to take action on their own. They're usually unwilling, and so the mentor actually challenges the hero to take action. The mentor essentially says, hey, look, listen, you've got to move. You've got to get going on this, right? We've got to solve this problem. Let's go. And the mentor is the one who challenges the hero to move the story forward. It's true in movies and in books, and it should be true in your practice as well. And what this means for you is this. If you haven't clearly and concisely called your patients into action, if you're not saying, I want you to follow my treatment plan, I want you to invest in this treatment, or here's what I want you to do, patients do not recognize you as their mentor. They will not recognize you as a trust. Patients do not recognize you as their mentor. They will not recognize you as a trusted advisor. Patients who are going to be investing large sums of money with you are looking for you to be the expert, and they're really looking for you to tell them what to do. It's not because they're stupid. That's not the idea here at all. Listen, people are being bombarded with over 2,000 commercial messages every single day. So they need you to communicate very clearly, very concisely what you want them to do. And then we get into the final two elements in the practice storyline framework, which is none of this matters unless there are stakes in this story. And by stakes, here's what I mean. Something either has to be won or lost by the hero. For the hero, this thing either has to end in tragedy or it has to end in a great success. And if that isn't foreshadowed or foretold all the way through the story, this is not going to go very well for you, right? He might not find a new planet humans can live on, or she might not defeat the evil empire so the rebellion can win, or he might not defeat the machines. Tragedy or in a great success. And if that isn't dispersed throughout the entire story, we have no interest in the story. That's a writer downer. Listen, if there are no stakes in the story, there isn't a story. So what does that mean for your practice? It means that you have to very clearly communicate what your patients' lives can look like if they engage with your practice and become your patient. And you have to clearly communicate, listen to me, you have to clearly communicate what their lives will look like if they don't. If you communicate what their lives will look like if they engage with your practice and become your patient, and what their lives might look like negatively if they don't, you put stakes into your patient's story. And it's these 7 elements that create the practice storyline framework that I want to teach you. And if you can apply these elements to your practice and to your marketing, you're going to create crystal clear messaging and communication points, and you're going to be inviting your patients into a story that they really want to dive into. You will engage them in a language they already speak. All right. Now you understand the power in a language they already speak. All right. Now you understand the power of story. You understand how to create a story, at least a little bit. And this is going to help you execute a really great messaging framework. And without question, I realize this. I covered several really big paradigm shifts today, but these are really, really important to your success. And in the next episode, I'm going to show you examples of how several of the world's most successful companies are using this framework to make billions, that's with a B, billions and billions and billions of dollars, so you can better see it and create it for your own practice. Well, hopefully I've got you excited about some of the simple changes that you can make in your messaging and communications using the practice storyline framework to see huge improvements in your marketing, and more important, in the number of high-quality new patients who will start scheduling appointments with you. But let me ask you this. Would you be willing to consider overhauling your marketing and making real, meaningful changes to your marketing in the next 90 days? In the next 90 days, how interested are you in creating powerful marketing messaging and communication that gets high-value new patients, cash new patients to call your office and schedule an appointment? The reason I ask is because I think it can only take that long. It's a short period of time to make minor changes. It's not super expensive. If you want to do that with us through .com Dentist, we would love to help you. Now, there are 3 ways that we help dentists clarify their messaging and communication. The first is an online course, super easy to use, take it at your own pace, and that is the Practice Storyline Framework online training. I've mentioned that multiple times. The second is our live marketing workshop that takes place here in St. Louis. And the third is where me or one of my team will come to your practice and spend from 1 to 5 days with you and your team to help you clarify your practice's messaging and communications and your marketing. We are here to help. Here's my promise to you. If you'll learn to clarify your messaging and communications, and if you'll decide to implement the practice storyline framework in your practice, your practice is going to get results. Your marketing collateral, whether it's internal marketing, whether you're talking to your team, or external marketing, where you're talking to patients, whether it's online or off, is going to start to get results. Next, we're going to help you create a tagline and power script that will generate targeted to salespeople. I mean, your front desk person, your office manager, dental assistants, associate doctors, even your hygienist. They should all be able to use your tagline and power script that spreads the word about your practice. Next, we're going to help you become a marketing black belt. You know, I've had dentist clients with a 4-year marketing and business degree tell me that the Practice Storyline Framework online training was better than anything they learned in college. You're going to be completely transformed after attending the Practice Storyline Framework online training and then our advanced training programs we have after that. Patients will finally start responding to your marketing and to your website. They'll start clicking the schedule an appointment button on your website. High-value new patients are going to respond because you're finally communicating them in such a way that they're going to listen. In addition to that, your new messaging skills will result in an increase in case acceptance, which leads to increased production. And lastly, your practice is going to become consistently more profitable. That's the dominant goal of .com Dentist. Not just to help you clarify your messaging and your communications and create a marketing plan that works, but to improve case acceptance, increase production, and make your practice imminently more profitable. Listen, before being run over by a dump truck, I practiced for 17 years. I own multiple clinics, and I know what it means to run a practice. I know how it is to wake up every day and have to make payroll. I know how it is to want my practice to grow. That is my goal for you as well, and we deliver on that promise. Listen, if you're ready to clarify your messaging and communications within the next 90 days, and if you want to see serious results, go to .comdentist.co/online-training and register for the Practice Storyline Framework online training. I'll put that link in the show notes for you. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.
Our objective with this podcast is to help you and your practice stand out in the marketplace by crystallizing your messaging and communications.